Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's been a long year since Starfield came out. A lot of people, like myself, really loved it. A lot of people hated the game. Some people just felt like it was mid. Regardless to say, it was a very divisive release. And over this last year, we've gotten a ton of quality of life improvements that I think have made a huge difference in the game. And we finally got Starfield Shattered Space, the first story expansion. The first of many, hopefully. I have been playing this DLC every day since launch, and I'm really excited to get to talk to you guys about it. But just for full transparency, I have not completely beaten the DLC yet. I have beaten the main quest, and I have beaten most of the side quests. I think there's 2 or 3 side quests that I'm still missing. So I have not fully beaten it yet, and I was trying really hard to beat it before making this video, but there's just so much to do, and I really need to get this video out. So after I make this video, as I'm playing the last couple of quests, if there's anything major that I feel like I need to bring up, I'll drop a comment down below. But let's really get into this review. I think the simplest way to phrase what I want to talk about today is Shattered Space is more Starfield. If you are like me and the many people who adore this game, you are going to love Shattered Space. If you are one of the people who really didn't like Starfield, I'm not really sure if this DLC is for you. There's a ton of amazing stuff and fun stuff in this DLC, but it really is just more Starfield, which for me is amazing, and I'm so excited to have had a chance to play it, and I'm already thinking of future playthroughs and the opportunity to actually get to play it again. I love this DLC. Starfield is my favorite game of all time, and as I've already said, this is just more Starfield. And not only that, but it's an in-depth look into House Va'ruun, which was something that really captured my attention in my initial playthrough of the base game. And so to actually get to go to Va'ruun Kai and Dazra and learn more about their culture and their lore and who they are, how they operate, their government, their everyday people, it was amazing. I loved this DLC. I'm gonna get more into depth for a lot of things, but I should probably give a spoiler warning here. I'm gonna be talking about the main quest pretty in-depth as we move forward, so if you haven't beaten it yet, I would recommend going and finishing it and then coming back and watching this video. I think we need to tackle this first. As much as I adore this DLC, it is not perfect. There is very valid criticism of the game, and I'm going to be talking about some of my critiques and some of the things that I didn't necessarily enjoy during this review. And there are lots of people who genuinely just didn't like the game and who also have very valid critiques of the game. That being said, a lot of people are blatantly lying on the internet about this DLC, and obviously that's just how the internet works. People are constantly lying all the time on the internet about everything. But it's really discouraging to see people so angry and upset about certain things in the DLC that's just not true. So I'm going to be going through some of the critiques I've seen on the internet, some of my personal critiques, and discussing how valid and or truthful they are. So I think the most outrageous lie I've seen so far is that the DLC as a whole is only 10 hours worth of content, which again is just a blatant lie. I think if you really rush through the main story and you don't do any side quests and you get really lucky and don't die at all, you probably could beat the main quest in about 10 hours. I obviously don't know the exact number because I was splitting up main quests, side quests. I did a little outpost building, some ship building, some base game quests. You know, I didn't just play the main quest straight, nothing else. So I don't know my exact time, but I want to say I roughly played the main quest for about 12 hours. This obviously did include me dying a couple times. My game did crash, I want to say twice. I do feel like it's important to bring that up. I didn't have a perfect, smooth gaming experience. Overall, I felt like it was great, but I do think in these reviews it's important to discuss things like that. But yes, I would say roughly 10 to 12 hours for my own personal playthrough. That doesn't include the 11 side quests that are in the game, plus all of the other things that you can do on Dazra, or just Varun Kai in general. Like I said, I have been playing every single day this week since the DLC came out, and I haven't beaten everything. And I've been playing a lot. I'm pretty sure I'm roughly about 30 hours into the DLC. I'm sitting about 40 hours on my playthrough currently, but I did play about 10 hours before the DLC came out because I'd started a new character and wanted to level him up a little bit before actually going to the DLC. So roughly about 30 hours, but again, some of that has been outpost building, ship building, and I have gone and done a couple base game quests, mostly just looking for more of the Starborn powers. My whole point to this is the DLC is much longer than 10 hours. There is a ton of content in this game. And kind of going along with the whole, the game's really short, not worth $30 mentality, Bethesda added 50 new locations within this game, specifically on Dazra for people to go find and explore. At the time of recording this video, on Xbox, I can't speak for Steam players, only 0.02% of Xbox players have discovered all 50 locations on Dazra. Not even 1% of players have found everything, and people are saying that there's nothing to do on the planet, that it's too short, that it's not worth the money. It just blows my mind that people have barely touched this game and are already raging. Like, there are, again, very valid critiques of the game from people who have actually at least beaten the main quest. But literally, from day one of the DLC launching, people were complaining that there wasn't enough content. And I'm just sitting there like, you have to play the game. You have to go out and play the game to find this content. Oh, yeah, this is the one that pisses me off the most. I've been seeing multiple people complain that they didn't add any more lore to House Varun. Are you serious? I'm sorry. If you didn't like the lore, that is 100% valid. If you found it uninteresting or it just didn't compel you in any way, that's totally valid. But to sit here and say that they didn't add any new lore and that Bethesda was being super lazy is crazy. If you genuinely believe they didn't add lore to House Varun, did you even play the DLC? Again, you have to play the game to experience the game. The entire thing was a lore dump on House Varun, and I adored it. They added so much cool lore. I spent so much time reading just random books that I found or talking in depth with characters to find out as much as I could about this faction. No meaningful Andreja dialogue. Now, this, I will admit, is a critique that I had. Like, when we landed on Dazra and I started to talk to Andreja, I was just sitting there like, seriously, you don't have any reaction to this? And there were often times as I was playing through the main quest where I was like, come on, Andreja, say something. So Bethesda's mentality for this DLC is apparently they didn't want to make people feel like they had to bring a certain companion, which I think is a good approach, except the whole part of Andreja's storyline is that she doesn't really know how to get home. She doesn't know if she'll get to go home or when that's going to happen. So I was a little disappointed when I went through this DLC. But there were a couple lines that I felt like really stuck out with Andreja. It wasn't much, but there were a few. Like when we first get to the space station that starts the DLC, there's the House Varun symbol, and she says something about that. And one of my favorite lines from her was when you actually like go to join House Varun and you go into the cave, she has a line about how this is going to be amazing or a really good experience. I can't remember what she's saying off the top of my head. So there were a couple lines that you get from her, but I do wish there had been more. But, and I actually did intend to harp on this more, just before I started recording this video, somebody posted that if you complete her quest line after the DLC, it will change how her quest line ends. So all this time, people have been sitting complaining about it, myself included. I will take responsibility for it. But Bethesda actually does address this, and I think that's really cool. From what I've seen, it pretty majorly changes the ending of her quest line. Again, the whole quest is about her, and I believe it's Tomasar. Again, it's been a while since I've played the base game, so forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly. She's trying to find a way home, and she needs to go through him to go home, and he betrays her, and it's this big thing. But now she has a line at the end, a couple lines, but she has one where she specifically tells him, I don't need you to go home. I found my own way back, and I adore that. I love that. I think that's so cool, and I'm really glad that Bethesda actually addressed that. So while I do feel like there should have been a little more in terms of Andreja, especially when you get to Dazra, there's way more than I thought, and so I'll take it. I'll take it. Next, I've been seeing a lot of people complain about the lack of new weapons and new outfits, and that everything is just reskins. Now, I will fully admit there are a lot of reskins on things, but there's also new stuff too. Just for full transparency, the first Varun outfit that I saw was the Varun guard outfit, and it's just a recolor of the normal guard outfit from the base game, and I got really discouraged myself. I was like, oh, that sucks. But like we've been saying this whole time, you have to play the game to experience the game. As you go forward, you find new stuff that's not just reskins. So let's start with spacesuits. There is a new recolor of the Varun Zealot spacesuit, which I actually adore. I love this recolor so much. It's just the base spacesuit, but instead of black, it's gray, and now it has white paint on it with like a snake skeleton design on the paint. I think it looks so good. While yes, it's a recolor, I think it looks way better than just the base version, so I love it. But then they add two more spacesuit designs. There's the assault suit and the heavy assault suit, which both look really, really good, and they fit within the Varun aesthetic. I think the Varun heavy assault spacesuit design is one of my favorite spacesuits in the entire game, base, DLC, regardless. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's easily top 5. The helmet, the assault helmet, however, I think is my favorite helmet in the entire game, specifically the Zealot recolor of it, where, again, it's gray with the white paint on it, but they make the visor look like an opening snake mouth with the fangs coming down. It looks so good. I love these suits. And then in terms of just like apparel, yes, again, we have some recolors or redesigns, reskins, but there's also new Varun apparel. And not only that, there is apparel for the 3 specific houses, or the 3 surviving houses within House Varun. House Kadik, their like black and gold color scheme looks so good. It's definitely my favorite house aesthetically. Temperance, character-wise, morals, probably not my favorite, but aesthetically, fire. Moving on to weapons, we do get 3 new weapons, and we get 3 reskins. One of my favorite is the Penumbra as a new weapon. This weapon is just so different. It's got a very slow projectile that shoots in a very wide base. I really adore this weapon. There's the Starstorm, which is a minigun, and I feel like people are going to argue and say that this is just a reskin. I disagree. Yes, we do have a minigun in the base game, but the Starstorm aesthetically just looks so different, and it has a different ammo type. I think it should stand as its own weapon. I feel like comparing it to the base game minigun and saying it's a reskin is like saying the Rattler and the Eon are just reskins of each other because they're both pistols, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know how to pronounce this, but the Shimaz, the Varun sword, I really love. Especially when you get into the weapon modifying and you can really change the look of it. It looks so cool. It's been the first melee weapon, DLC and base game, that I have kept on me consistently. And probably because it's a new weapon and they want us to find it, I literally have found like 6 legendary versions of it already. And I have kept all of them. We do have 3 actual like reskins, which I actually have only found one of these. So I'm reading these from a list. There's the Quick Strike, the Star Slash, and the Long Fang. These are reskins of the Eon, the Equinox, and the Orion. And I'm okay with it. And I think a lot of people are really disappointed because we only got 6 new weapons and half of them were reskins. I think that's okay. I think that's a very valid critique. But I also think we need to remember that this DLC is fleshing out the Varun faction, not completely adding a new faction. We already had a lot of apparel for them. We already had a spacesuit for them. We already had 3 base game weapons for them. So when you actually take a look at the faction House Varun now, base game and DLC, we have 6 main weapons, 3 reskins, bringing them up to a total of 9 faction-specific weapons, which I feel like is pretty decent. But I do hope we get more as time goes by. The one thing I'm really disappointed about in terms of their weapons is I was really hoping for a Varun-specific shotgun. Now, I know we have the Big Bang, we do have like our laser particle beam shotgun in the game already, but I still would have really liked to see one from House Varun, specifically just for the aesthetics, honestly. But at the end of the day, it didn't ruin my experience in any way. No new ship parts. And this is another thing that I was pretty disappointed about as well. I was really looking forward to getting to build some Varun-specific ships, which we do have Varun ships in the base game, but they are all based on settled space ship manufacturers. I'm genuinely really surprised that we didn't get more. But people are saying that Bethesda lied to us and that they used new ship parts as a big part of their marketing and are very upset that we didn't get new ship parts. That, again, is just a blatant lie. Now, what was said is that there was going to be new customization options. And with the release of the DLC, we did get the new flip and merge customization option, which was a mod that apparently got so popular that Bethesda made an official part of the game, and it came out with this release. So I think it's perfectly okay to be mad at Bethesda for not being totally upfront about what those customization options are. I think that's totally valid. But to say that they just lied to us and used it as a huge selling point of the game and then just didn't give it to us, that's, again, just not true. They told us there was going to be new ship customization options, and we got new ship customization options. No new companions. Also a lie. This game does feature 2 new companions, Tane and I forgot her name, but she is on my ship. Saima! I had to look her up. These are like the rest of the companions from the base game. They are not full companions like the 4 Constellation companions are. And so I think, again, it is a very valid critique if you're unhappy that we didn't get full companions. But again, to say that we got no new companions is a lie. And just to specify for anyone who isn't entirely sure what I mean by companions versus main companions, in the base game, you have the 4 Constellation members, which are fully fleshed out companions that have tons of dialogue options, companion-specific quest lines, and are romanceable. Then there is a very large pool of more just basic companions, which do have some lines of dialogue, like you can have a couple conversations with them, learn more about them, they can travel with you, you can have them at your outposts or on your ships, but they don't have specific quest lines, and you cannot romance them. So I think a lot of people were really hoping for a more in-depth companion. So again, I think that's totally a valid critique. But to say there are none just isn't true. Quests are all fetch quests. I have no idea where this narrative is coming from. Again, there are, I think, 2 or 3 side quests that I haven't completed, so maybe those are fetch quests, right? Bing, editor Elijah here. Okay, so I just wanted to jump in and talk about this a little more, because I have gone ahead and done most of the side quests that I was missing, but turns out I was missing like 6 side quests, so I still have a couple more to do. But I gotta eat my own words. 2 of the side quests I have done since I made my initial recording did end up being fetch quests. One, I genuinely really loved The Legend of the Fang. Yes, it was a fetch quest, but man was it fun, and you gotta learn some cool lore about Varun. The other one, Scientific Methods. The quest line was 4 quests. The first 3 were pretty boring, just being honest, but the last quest let me go fight some space pirates, so I mean, it had a good payoff. However, I just got done with the Lost and Found quest, and I just wanted to take a moment to talk about how emotional this game and its side quests can be. One, I just found a random citizen walking around Dazra, and I started talking to him, and he brought up how his wife had passed away, and I had the dialogue option to ask him about his wife, and man, just getting to listen to him talk about why he loved her so much, and the emotion in his voice and his dialogue. I mean, the writing team and the voice actor did a phenomenal job. And then almost right after that, I went and did the Lost and Found quest, where you have to go help this elderly gentleman who has either Alzheimer's or dementia or something like that. And it's a really short quest, but you have to help him clean his apartment and find some stuff he's missing. And as you're playing through, this elderly gentleman cannot remember something very important, and that's kind of why you're there, is to help him remember. And as you're playing through, you realize, oh, his granddaughter was lost in the Scaled Citadel explosion, and you have this really emotional conversation with him about how he's purposely not taking his medication because he wants to forget her, because the pain is just too much for him to handle. And man, oh man, was that just so emotional and so well written. And I don't know, it was a really short quest, but I am almost in tears. And that is one of the reasons that I just love this game so much, because of these little beautiful moments that just have so much emotion behind them. Anyway, I'll let you get back to the normal video now. Goodbye. But besides that, there aren't really any fetch quests that I can think of. There is a early side quest where you have to go deliver some packages to people. That does feel kind of fetch questy, but I feel like they tied it into the story very well, where obviously there was this massive disaster on Dazra and people need supplies, and it's requested that you go deliver these supplies to help out the people of Dazra. So while it does kind of feel fetch questy, I feel like they worked it into the story very well. And then I think technically the dam mission does end up being a fetch quest, because you find something that you have to bring back that's important for the main quest later. But you don't know that going into it. They just tell you, hey, something's going on at the dam. We need you to go check it out. And like, that mission is so cool overall. Like, you are fighting this team of immortal phantoms that every time you kill them just come back to life to fight you later. It's so cool. And then at the end of that quest, you were given a choice. Do you take this machinery and like permanently kill these phantoms and maybe destroy the farm that is on the other side of this dam? Or do you leave it and maybe not be able to complete the main quest later? And that is a huge theme of a lot of the quests within this DLC, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But I don't know, even though it was technically a fetch quest, it didn't feel like it, and it had a lot of depth that made it super fun and really enjoyable. This doesn't add anything to the base game or any new encounters. Again, this is just blatantly a lie. Now, I can't say if it adds any new POIs. There are some Dazra-specific POIs that I could definitely see they make as like just general POIs that could spawn on random planets, but I don't know if they do or not. However, there are new encounters that you can find within the rest of the galaxy that have to do with the DLC and are DLC-specific encounters. Specifically, the Serpent's Crusade. If you choose to restart the Serpent's Crusade, you can run into Crusaders throughout the galaxy as you continue to play through the game. And that's not even the only one. Again, as I've said multiple times throughout this video, you have to play the game to experience the game. Again, there are very valid critiques of the game. When I'm saying these things, I'm not talking about the valid critiques about the game. What I am critiquing specifically is the people who barely touch the game or haven't even touched the game at all and are just blatantly lying to make the game seem worse than it is. Maybe if you spent more time actually playing the game than hating on it online, you'd see that a lot of these things that you're mad about aren't actually worth being mad about because they aren't true, or they're kind of true, but you've way over-exaggerated, and all you're doing is ruining your own enjoyment and other people's enjoyment. Like, people who might really love this game are seeing the lies that you're posting online and are either never going to try the game because of what they saw, or even worse, spreading this misinformation without actually experiencing it themselves. And lastly, I've seen a lot of people complaining about enemy types. I'm sorry. At this point, I've been complaining myself way longer than I thought I would be. I thought this was going to be a really quick section of me saying, actually, you're wrong, and I'm right. But just enemy variety. A lot of people are really upset that there aren't more enemy types, and I see it. I think that's a valid critique. Again, I think a lot of the enemies that they did add, specifically the Redeemers and the Vortex Horrors, are really, really cool. We also get, I think they're called Bone Crests on the planet that you can fight. We get Vortex Phantoms, which can either be animals or they can be Varun people who are very aggressive. In terms of new enemy types, that's pretty much it. There are some variations within that bolster it. I really like the new enemy types. Would I like to see more? Yes. But I still think they are a really nice addition to the game, especially saying you can find some of this stuff in the base game if you try it. I'm sorry, I know I spent way too long talking about that. I did not intend to talk that long. And we haven't even gotten into what I really adore about this game. This is going to be a long one, besties. But I just felt like it was really important that we take a minute or 40 to address some of these things and separate the truth from the lies. But we're done. We can finally really get into the DLC. We were talking about enemies last. Let's talk about Vortex Horrors. Vortex Horrors are so cool. They are amazing. Now, initially, before the game came out, I saw somebody talking about how maybe these might be Starfield's equivalent of Deathclaws. I don't know if I necessarily would go that far, but I still adore these enemies. And they've got a really interesting, kit of abilities. They have their really long arms, which let them obviously reach out and hit you. They have a ranged projectile attack. They have a scream attack, which can very momentarily stun you, which can stun lock you out of what you were doing. And they can teleport around the map. Or I guess maybe technically they make portals. Trying to decide how best to describe this. I think teleporting is right, but I really like these enemies. They are creepy. There are a couple points during the game where you have to fight a lot of them, and that's really stressful. But just in general, they were very difficult to beat. Every time I came across a Vortex Horror, I really wasn't sure which one of us was going to live. They, I think, just provided that perfect amount of challenge where I did feel like I could beat them if I played right, but I also knew that if I wasn't smart, I was going to die, and I think that's a really great place for enemies to be. Also, I mentioned it a few times while streaming, they have a very human-like head, and their spawnling form looks eerily like a heat leech, which, as we know from the base game, heat leeches are, I don't want to say baby terramorphs. I think it's more of like a bug, larva situation. But between that and the human-like skull, I've got a crackpot theory that Vortex Horrors actually came about as some grotesque experiment trying to genetically combine terramorphs and humans. And I know that's really out there, but I just wanted to also get my theory out there because it just makes sense, right? Arguably, you could say, oh, well, it would be a lot cheaper of them to just make the heat leech glow than to create a whole new asset for the spawnling version. But I like my theory a lot better. The Redeemed, very aggressive, very in your face, another enemy where I felt like the challenge was just right. And the lore behind them is crazy. As you initially find them and start fighting them, you think, okay, these are people who willingly decided to become these massive cyborg warriors. But then as you play through some of the side quests, you learn, oh, no, these people were captured, held hostage, and forcibly modified to become these creatures. And it's really sad. I love that because every time I see one, I'm like, okay, I'm in for a fight. But after learning that, it's like, okay, I'm into a fight. And also, oh, this sucks. This person didn't want to become this. The Vortex Phantoms are another enemy where I feel very similar to that is, this sucks. These people did not want to become these phantoms. They don't want to fight their own people. They don't want to kill their own people. They just want to go home. And yet the only way to return them to the physical realm is to kill them. And I mean, at that point, they're dead. So I don't know. I love when a game makes me really think about their enemies. And Shattered Space did that for me, and I adore that. I feel like all the side quests were really solid. They all ranged in length. Some of them were pretty short, just a couple smaller objectives, while others felt a little longer. There was a couple that actually felt like main quest length quest lines, if that makes sense. So I appreciated that variety. My favorite side quest, though, I think is the one where you help a former Varun zealot go back and hunt his old crew on his path to redemption. I really, really loved that quest. It was short, very action-packed, and I got to help a man who is trying to make a better way for himself in the galaxy. I mean, who could complain about that? However, I was really hoping we could add him to our crew, have him as a companion. I was really surprised that we couldn't, and I hope that's something that Bethesda updates in the future. The main story, though, I thought was really, really good. So, just for full transparency, I think it feels a lot like the faction quests for the Crimson Fleet, the United Colonies, and the Freestar Collective. If you played those quests, it's really the same vibe. I think it might be a little more in-depth. It may even be a little longer, but I don't want to say for sure just because it has been quite a while since I've played those quest lines. But it's a very similar vibe. You go through, you help this faction out. At the end, you make a major decision that will affect the galaxy, and then you get a house for them, and you really officially become a part of that faction. That being said, I don't think that's a bad thing. I really, really loved this questline. I love that it fit aesthetically, or it fit thematically with the rest of the game and the rest of the faction quests. So, just in summary, you arrive in Dazra a few weeks after a major disaster, an explosion at the Scaled Citadel, which destroyed most of the city, and really, you were there to help the survivors. And I really, really loved the story of this DLC, especially the house-specific quest lines I thought were really good. All three of them were really good, and I loved that we got to learn more about the three houses through these quest lines, and that through learning that, it does affect the end of your playthrough. I've already kind of talked about the dam quest already, but I think my favorite out of the three is the Kadik quest line, where Varun zealots have captured members of House Kadik, and you have to go save them. However, it throws a curveball and says, hey, actually, House Kadik has been funding the zealots this whole time. And the councilwoman, so just for anyone who doesn't know, their houses are broken up. They have a house elder, which leads the house, and then they have a house council person, which obviously sits on the high council and helps make decisions for the government as a whole. So both very important people in the house. The house elder wants you to obviously go kill the zealots and bring their people home. The councilwoman, on the other hand, says, hey, my house has been funding these zealots and I want it to stop. If you kill the hostages and just say that they were dead when you got there, House Kadik will have no option but to cut ties with the zealots for killing so many of our people. That was a gut-wrenching decision that I had to make, because really it was just the trolley problem. I either save these hostages, knowing that House Kadik is going to continue to fund this terrorist organization that not only is killing people on Dazra, or in Dazra and on Varun Kai, but also killing people throughout the entire galaxy. Or I could kill, I want to say there was roughly like 12 hostages maybe. Like, I could kill these 12 people. So do I have 12 people's blood on my hands specifically and save countless lives throughout the rest of the galaxy? Or do I spare these people and let this house continue to fund these terrorists? And that, really just, I did not like having to make that choice. I, however, did choose to save the hostages. I couldn't bring myself to it. And throughout this story, you were learning more and more about the three surviving houses. There's also House Malene, which is the house that leads the zealots. I really like that the zealots have their own main house. I don't think all of their members necessarily are House Malene. Like, I'm sure there were extremists from all the houses that flocked to House Malene after they decided to continue the Serpent's Crusade. But I love the fact that one house really just stuck with it, right? House Vithal, just while we're talking about all the houses, I believe they lead the Wardens, which I think are kind of like the police or detectives, maybe, might even be a better choice. That quest line revolved around having to go find the leader of the house's son and kill him for being a traitor. And this was another quest where you were forced to make a choice. Do you stay loyal to House Varun and kill this traitor, or do you help him escape? So I'm hoping you're seeing the theme of these quests. Everything is about choice and how you want to affect the landscape of Dazra. And that all comes to a head when you enter the Scaled Citadel. And again, you were given another major choice. Do you betray House Varun and kill Anasco and save the galaxy, or do you die? And listen, as I've already established, I was playing a loyal House Varun citizen, so I chose to just let Anasco kill me for the greater good, right? And I died. My character just died. It does reload you to your last previous save. I do wish we would have gotten a little something, like maybe a cutscene. I was thinking maybe like you get a glimpse of the Great Serpent or something before you die. Or maybe even just the credits roll, like you kneel and the credits roll, just to give it a little more emphasis of, hey, you just died, instead of just automatically reloading your last save. But besides that, again, another major choice. But after you get out of the Scaled Citadel, you have to decide which house is going to now lead House Varun, and if you're going to continue the Serpent's Crusade or not. Again, just another major choice. Everything about this DLC is dependent on your choices. As we've already talked about a little bit, you can choose to restart the Serpent's Crusade. I did initially because I just wanted to see how that would look, and then I went back to a previous save and undid it because, listen, that blood's not going to be on my hands. Okay, just not on my hands. But I really love that you have these options. Vithal and Kadik are very militaristic options or houses. So if you want to restart the Serpent's Crusade, these are great houses to choose. I think the best one personally would be to side with House Kadik because, I mean, they've been funding the Zealots this whole time anyway. Is it Dufal? I'm going to call him Dufal. I think that's incorrect. I apologize. And not only that, that's the faction that I chose to lead House Varun. So, you know, that's great. They are the, like, trade faction. They are definitely the most peaceful out of them. So that's the route that I went. I chose them to lead House Varun and not to continue the Serpent's Crusade because I wanted to see a peaceful future for these people. But you fully could march them to war if you want to. And as we discussed, you actually get to see that war start in encounters throughout the base game, which I love, 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 love. Varun Kai as a planet is so fun to explore. Really, there's 3 main biomes, a rocky desert, a sandy desert, and a frozen landscape. I think it's called Frozen Craters, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I should have wrote this down. Then on top of that, there are 5 new fauna types, and then each of these 5 fauna have a environmental specific version, depending on obviously which environment you are in. I was really excited when I saw that there was 18 fauna. I was like, oh man, this planet is just full of new fauna. That's so, so cool. And it was a little discouraging, I'm not gonna lie, going around the planet and seeing, oh, these are just environment-specific versions. But I think alternatively, how I've been looking at that is also these animals, while they are still the same animals, have evolved slightly differently around the planet to their environment, which is more realistic. It's how our planet works. So I'm okay with it, honestly. And then, obviously, that's only 15. We do have the Vortex Horror, the Spawnling, and then whatever the middle version of is them, which kind of looks like a face hugger, I'm not gonna lie, and they freaked me out, bringing us to a total of 18. I didn't spend a lot of time looking at the plants, just being honest, sorry, but the planet as a whole just feels so unique from other planets. The skybox is gorgeous. One of my favorite planets, I spend so much time just kind of walking around, enjoying that skybox and the sky. The landscape is really cool. It feels, I don't know, I feel like they really captured that this is a moon to a gas giant, but it's still its own unique thing vibe. I hope that makes sense. Like we talked about earlier, there are 50 new POIs. I did mention that there are a certain number of players who have or haven't actually found all of them. I am definitely in the have not found all of them, but I do think it's something I'd like to do and plan to go through and find all of these new POIs. Oh, I didn't even talk about the Vortex Grenades. The Vortex Grenades are great. I just love the idea of organic grenades. Now, I will say they are kind of hard to make, saying you need specifically the Vortex Cysts, I believe they're called, and different versions of those cysts to make the different grenades, which, as far as I'm aware, I could totally be wrong, you can only get them from Vortex Horrors, and you don't really run into the Vortex Horrors that often, which I do enjoy. I definitely prefer that they keep those a little limited because it makes them just feel that much more horrifying when you do run into one. But I just find myself not really using the Vortex Grenades that I have because I only have a couple of them, and what if I need them later? I'm one of those types of gamers. That's a personal thing. So I hope that that's something they add in the future, is a way to build more of them quicker. There are new Varun-specific outpost buildings, which I really like, and I'm really hoping that as we upgrade the decoration options for outpost building, that we get some of the Varun architecture, because it's just so cool. I said it over and over and over again on my live stream as I was playing through the DLC. The art department crushed it. The aesthetics are amazing for this DLC. I love, love, love House Varun and just their entire design. And so I really hope that we get those options as we continue to level up. Again, I started a new character, so a lot of my outpost upgrades, specifically the decorations one, I need to finish upgrading. So I can't say for sure if there are. I do think I will be a little disappointed if there aren't, but at the end of the day, it won't be the end of the world, right? Something I found really, really strange is that there are 3 places you can find armor and weapons on Dazra that I know of. There might be others that I've missed, but none of them really sell Varun apparel, spacesuits, or weapons. And the first 2, there's a goods exchange and a depository. I was like, okay, these are kind of just general stores. I get it, whatever. But then as you play through the game, you get access to the armory. And I was like, okay, it's literally their House Varun armory. There's going to be a ton of weapons and spacesuits there that I can buy. And every time I've been to the armory, there has been not a single Varun item. And that just feels really weird to me. I get the other 2. I can justify the other 2 in my mind. But the armory not having Varun items just feels weird. Like, why is their armory selling United Colonies spacesuits? Why is their armory selling Freestar Collective guns? You know what I'm saying? That was one of the things that kind of broke the immersion for me, because it made me think, okay, probably just the way they program their game with the random weapons, blah, 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 blah. Again, not the end of the world, but it was something I've been thinking about a lot. There was so much love poured into this game, though. Like, I've been reading a lot of the books and notes that I found, and one of my favorite things that I found is a retelling of A Christmas Carol from a Varun point of view. So, Janan, the starter of House Varun, him and his group were on a colony ship when he encountered the Great Serpent, or made up the Great Serpent, whatever you choose to believe. So he was a older human, or like part of the first group of humanity to, start exploring the stars. I hope that makes sense of what I'm trying to say. Obviously, he would know about A Christmas Carol, right? So he spread that to the rest of his people, and they have a writing about Scrooge and how he goes through and sees visions, different phantoms sent from the Great Serpent, and they end it by talking about how in the end Scrooge gave his life to the Great Serpent and lived happily ever after or whatever. That's something we find out about Varun. I can't remember if it's in the base game or the DLC, that they do get a lot of media from the settled system, but they change it to give it a House Varun Great Serpent message. And to actually find novels and get to read how they did that was really cool. Like, another one I found was Oliver Twist as well. There was just so many little tiny details like that I thought just really elevated the DLC. It made it feel like this culture was real, this religion was real, their government was real. Essentially, it just turned one of the factions we knew the least about to maybe the faction we know the most about now. And like I said earlier into this video, that's what I was really looking for from the DLC, was to learn more about House Varun, and I got that, and I couldn't be happier. So lastly, I think I want to talk about the Great Serpent and whether or not it is real. So in my theory video, linked up above if you want to check it out, this was recorded like a year ago, so obviously a lot of it is wrong, but I specifically talked about the possibility that the Great Serpent, regardless of if it was a conscious being or not, was what separated the different universes. As we know, Starfield exists within a multiverse. That's the whole point of the main quest line, is getting to Unity and traveling to another universe. So with the DLC, we now know that the Vortex essentially is the space between these universes. And I think that is what the Great Serpent is. It either is the Vortex or it lives within the Vortex. And I've been thinking a lot about whether or not the Great Serpent is real, and I think it is. I'm not entirely sold on if it's a conscious being or not, but I do think House Varun is worshiping something that is real. However, their interpretation of it might be wrong. I hope that makes sense. I think they worship the vortex. I think the Great Serpent is the vortex. And a big reason that I think this is because the vortex phantoms are immune to the Starborn powers, the power of unity. Now, I also talked about potentially that the Great Serpent is unity, or a being on the same level of unity, a being who sort of like a Satan-esque being that betrayed the rest of unity. There are a lot of options there. Again, go check out my video if you want to know more. But I'm really leaning towards the fact that if the Great Serpent or the Vortex is its own being and isn't a part of unity, its power has got to be either very close to or on the same level as unity, specifically because the Vortex Phantoms are immune to the powers. I'm going to be spending a ton of time doing research. I want to go through and read more of the notes that I missed or computers that I missed. I want to find out every single thing I can about House Faroon and the Great Serpent. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because for me as a person to be interested in the lore like this, it has to be interesting. This is a testament to how good the devs have done in creating this culture. My obsessive little gremlin brain is being an obsessive little gremlin about House Faroon and the Great Serpent. And for me personally, that is one of the biggest compliments that I can give. I love this DLC. Not only was it fun, entertaining, emotional, gut-wrenching, interactive, but it made me think. It made me choose. It makes me want to dive deeper into this story. And that is why I love it so much. Starfield is my favorite game of all time. And Shattered Space, I think, is probably top 5 favorite DLC of all time. Part of me wants to give it that number 1 spot, but I don't think I can glaze it that much. I think I need to delve a little deeper into it before I fully decide, but definitely top 5. I had an amazing time with this DLC, and as I mentioned before, I'm really excited for future playthroughs so that I can play it again. Again, I know it was really harsh at the beginning of this recording. I was mad. And I still am. It's hard seeing there be so much negativity surrounded around something that I care about so deeply. And I know a lot of people, No Sodium Starfield. I love you guys, one of my favorite communities. But you know what I'm talking about. It's hard caring so deeply about it and seeing there just be so much negativity. And again, I think there are really valid critiques, and I hope that you guys have seen throughout this video that I myself, as much as I glaze this game, am more than willing to talk about the problems and issues that I see within it. But when people just blatantly lie, I just can't stand it. That all being said, I don't really think I have much more to say. I think I'll end on this. I think I said something similar in one of my reviews of the base game. Honestly, there are so many differing and divisive opinions on this game. If you somehow made it through all of this video and you haven't played Shattered Space yet, don't listen to my opinion, but also don't listen to the haters either. Just go in with an open mind and try it for yourself. And if you don't like it, that's totally okay. And if you hate it, that's okay too, right? But maybe, just maybe, you will find a game and a universe that you love just as much as I do. And I genuinely hope that for you. I care about this game so much, and I really hope that it brings other people as much joy as it does bring me. That being said, I'm gonna stop recording now. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of Shattered Space, and maybe we can have a discussion about it. Maybe not. We'll see what happens. Goodbye! Like and subscribe, please and thank you! Bye! Bye!